a conversation between Politics Done Right and Latino Rebel. Is it Latino Rebel on Substack, or what is it on Substack?
No, it's decolonized journalism.
That's right. You know what is so funny? I subscribe to Decolonize. I'm a paid subscriber to Decolonize journalists, and I can't remember the name. I'm getting old, Arturo. I'm getting old. What can I say? How
Well,
you
I did spend.
how
I'm
you
good. I did spend a lot of time working at Latino Rebels, but yeah. So
Yeah, I can't put picture on how to on what you're on any given day. But anyway, one of the things there are two reasons I wanted to have this discussion. The first one, of course, is this is the first time that I'm testing out the actual mobile version of the live. But secondly, I wanted to hear your opinion as far as the coverage for the Luigi Mangione. I'm not going to call it. I'm going to call it the issue, the act. What are your thoughts on this?
well, I never advocate for murder or anything like that, or people's death or anything, and I don't celebrate it. I do understand the apathy and the anger. My situation, right? I survived a stroke. We lost everything due to hundreds of thousands of dollars in hospital bills. I'm a pretty angry individual when it comes to our healthcare system, especially considering that, here we are 10 years later and I'm still struggling with my health and stuff. But, the media coverage has been really one-sided, right? So, they're admonishing a lot of people for um, elevating Mangione to like a folk hero type of status. And I don't think they talk about the tens of thousands of people who die every year due to being denied health care enough, right? So while yeah, Brian Thompson's murder is is pretty horrifying, um, I think what's more horrifying is that tens of thousands of people die every year due to a lack of health care or being denied coverage by insurance that you pay for. So, I get why he's been elevated to folk hero status. When you look at Congress in particular, Elizabeth Warren and Josh Hawley, right? Two people who couldn't be any more different, introduced a bill, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, to require insurance companies to stop controlling like people's prescriptions. What is it called? I got it pulled up here. The PBMs, right? Pharmacy Benefit Management.
The guys who control the drug distribution to pharmacies.
Right. So essentially, the bill is going to require health insurance companies to be one or the other. So within 3 years, you can either be pharmacy benefit manager or health insurance provider, but you can't be both. And, you know, did Mangione lead to this? I think so, because not what he did, but the outcry that occurred after what he did
I
was
am glad.
what led to.
I am so glad because again, when we look at the Mangione story, we see that Mangione is a wealthy guy, went to wealthy schools. In
Right.
reality, from a technical standpoint, whether he has insurance or not, I don't even know if that matters because again, he comes from a wealthy upbringing. But that
Right.
doesn't mean that is his actions. We don't know. We can't know what was the reasons for his actions, but the actions itself awoken people to, wow, somebody fought the guy. Maybe I can too. Yeah,
Right, right. And maybe it's not that extreme what Mangione did, but there's certainly this element of, we can fight back.
hmm
Um, like you said, Mangione came from privilege, from wealth, and his motivations, it's starting to sound like it had a lot to do with his own health, back surgeries, his mom's health, um, and a lot of anger there. But it's a pretty nonpartisan issue, right? This is a class issue, and that's what it's become. And I think that the media is having a hard time grasping that concept that, while they're admonishing people for, celebrating Mangione in a sense, and I wouldn't even call it celebrating because I don't know that anybody's really celebrating him like that. But um, for the folk hero status, at least, that's what they're admonishing people for. I think that, when you see that even right wingers, even MAGA, even far right people, Ben Shapiro, who's on the far right, we all know, he spoke out against it, against this folk hero elevation of Mangione. And his viewers went after him for
And
that.
MAGA viewers at that, yeah. It wasn't
Right,
even
right,
progressives coming in to kind of take over. It was his own folks, and it's like, guy, where are you?
right, right. And, that was really, really telling. Um, pretty much across the board, you see a lot of people, on the right, you see a lot of people are not, trying to celebrate the death. And, like I said, I don't know that anybody really is. But, on the right, you see people having the same issue because, again, this is a class issue. This is corporate America taking advantage of the population, and people are getting sick of it. Mangione was sick of it to a certain extreme. Um, and other people are sick of it to maybe not as extreme, but pretty close. And that's what leads to people like Elizabeth Warren and Josh Hawley, again, who couldn't be further apart on issues, to introduce a bill together to try to break up some of this control that insurance companies have. Because, you can't say they're a monopoly, but you can certainly call them oligopolies, right? Where, it's essentially a handful of companies agree on policies and how they're going to handle insurance and how much they're going to charge and all these things. And it's just gotten to the point where, you pay so much in premiums, then you have to pay so much in deductibles. And like when I had insurance, when I first had the stroke, my prescriptions, if I paid cash for a lot of them, almost all of them, were cheaper if I paid cash than than the copay was. And
Wow.
that to me, right, that to me tells me everything. I saved $200 by using a discount card and paying cash as opposed to filing it on my insurance. And a lot of my medications are extremely expensive for, being a stroke survivor. So, even now I don't have insurance, I don't have Medicaid, I don't have anything like that. I have to pay cash for everything. And, with discount cards and things like that, and my pharmacist is really good. They try to find me the best prices. And I hate to praise HEB all the time, but in Texas, we love our HEB.
They are a good company.
Um,
They're
right.
there are not a
I
lot
get,
of companies out there that really try to put their money where their propaganda is, and I find I've really found HEB both in the people that they hire, in what they enforce as far as people having to treat other people well. Kudos to HEB. So you have my vote on that as well. But I want to kind of migrate a bit because this morning on my KPFT 90.1 FM radio show, and by the way, I want you on my program a few times before the year ends because there's a whole lot that we need to talk about. So I really want us to have. I'll talk about when we can do some sort of a pre-record for it because we're going to be going in hiatus, and I want to have your voice out there. But we were talking about. You mentioned about the people feeling sick of the corporations doing this and the media not knowing how to handle it. My big question to you is, and I'm going to phrase it along with Gaza. Neither one of us want dead Palestinians or dead Israelis, but the way the media covers the 1,200 Israelis that were murdered compared to the 44,000 Palestinians is off kilter altogether. It's as if the Palestinians' life has no value. And I feel the same way. And tell me if you agree. with the way we handle, let's say, the media's handling of the people who react to Mangione in a certain way, while they have not reacted to the hundreds of thousands of people killed by insurance companies because of neglect. It behooves me that they don't see the similarities.
Right, and then that's the inherent bias in Western news in general, but U.S. media even more particular. Um, when it comes to Palestinians, at the I always go back to this because it drives me nuts. At the onset of the war in Ukraine, you had Charlie Daggett from CBS News over there. There was a lot of journalists that did this, talking about how Ukrainian refugees who were fleeing Ukraine and going into Europe and coming here, how they were blonde hair, blue eyed, they look like you and me, he said.
Hmm.
They are civilized, and he said, unlike unlike the children in the Middle East.
Right.
And that exposed the inherent bias in our media, the racism in our media, the bigotry in our media. When it comes to the Israel Palestine conflict, that's where that comes from.
Hmm.
It's not, when people speak out about Israel and Zionism, it's not because they want Jews out of the Middle East. There has always been Palestinian Jews, always. This isn't about Jews, right? This is about Zionism. This is about white supremacy. This is about targeting brown people and things like that. Then when you come back to the healthcare system, there's not much difference there, right? It's the people who suffer the most are the poor and marginalized, right? Poor white people, black people, brown people, Latinos, you name it. You know, you can't tell me because we see this when we try to submit our resumes and apply for jobs, right? If you have a name like mine that ends with a Z, it's Latino. A lot of times my resume gets tossed aside. People don't even know what I look like, but they're going to toss it aside because my name's not James something or another. And that's the same thing, right? So there's this corporate lean, this this lean to imperialism and colonization and suppression and oppression. Because when they're trying to admonish people for elevating Mangione to folk hero status, that's what that is. They're trying to suppress our voice, right? And the only reason anyone elevates him to that status is because everyone has had to deal with the healthcare system in this country. That is one thing all 400 million of us have had to deal with. We all have that in common. So it's essentially all the same. This is why I took up journalism after having a stroke and could be a government contractor anymore because you see this bias in the media constantly. With Mangione, you see police leaking information that a lot of it is rumor, but they're essentially trying to convict him before he has his day in court. This is same thing they do to black people, same thing they do to Latinos. We see it in Houston. You're from here, the Harding Street raid,
Hmm.
right? They killed two white people. Immediately, the police union was out there, the police department was out there, and they were admonishing Black Lives Matter protesters. They were demonizing the black community for speaking up against police brutality. And then it turns out later that the raid was a fraudulent raid. They lied to get the warrant. They killed two white people and their dog. And now the police union is nowhere to be found. You know, Nobody apologized. Then a report came out that I covered over the summer about Art Acevedo when he was chief here, telling the cops to turn their body cams off after the incident because it was recording what they were saying, and they were essentially saying, "Damn, we screwed up." And he was
Hmm.
like, "Turn your camera off. We don't need that. That's evidence against this type situation." So while everybody praised Art Acevedo when he was here, he turned out to be just as crooked as the previous chief and the cops who did the raid and all that stuff. And the media doesn't cover that. So there's this huge slant, towards law enforcement. I just wrote a story came out this morning about Almost 2 dozen cops were sent to Pennsylvania. They drove 80 miles an hour for 300 miles. One of them was carrying a long rifle in the police station, and they were there to quote unquote confront Mangione. Why are you sending? I mean, 2 detectives could have done this. How
Right.
much did that cost New York taxpayers? Lights and sirens on. How many people did they inconvenience on their 300-mile journey? Like, is that necessary? Again, media won't cover that. Fox News covered it, but they didn't realize what they were doing was exposing how wasteful police departments are.
Exactly.
Um, and all of this is the same. All of this comes
They
back to the same.
they can't afford to invest in healthcare. They
Right.
can't, but they can afford all these macho go law enforcement kind of a thing. Well, let me tell you, Arturo, I want to talk a little bit more about some of this with regards to the healthcare on our, I want to get us a 15-minute segment to play on KPFT. So offline, we'll kind of arrange something so that we can go through that. But in the interim, I want to thank you so kindly for speaking to me in an impromptu fashion with me just asking to speak to you about this issue because I think while the mainstream media isn't going to cover this story in the proper context, I think it's on you, it's on all of us that are doing independent media to do so. So I always try to give a plug on things like when we're doing this, and my plug is going to be, folks. We do the work that many on the mainstream media fails to do. We complement, and in fact, many times we have to take the lead. So please remember to subscribe to Decolonize. Give it a full name.
Decolonized journalism.
Decolonize Journalism, and of course, Egberto off the record. But right now, my brother, thank you so kindly for spending this time with me. And you
Absolutely.
have a wonderful rest of your day. And to those who listened, thank you so kindly. Please remember to share.
Thanks, Egberto.